Good morning. I think it is time for class to start. Everybody seems to be cheerful and talkative this morning. That's awesome. So that should bode well for class. Looking forward to it. Appreciate everybody being here. It's good to see everybody. When we left off Wednesday night, we were in 1 Peter chapter 5. And we were talking about elders. Talking about elders and their roles and their responsibilities, and especially during this time that we're talking about here in 1 Peter of persecution and suffering and the things that these people are facing and going through, and what are the elders' roles in that? We kind of started looking at that. We'll look at that again this morning. Kind of interesting. Talked about Peter a little bit. Peter identifies himself as an elder, along with being an apostle. We thought that was kind of interesting, and where would he have been an elder at, and kind of how did that dynamic relationship work with him being an elder and an apostle, and I think we see a little bit of Peter's maturity, that he knew he was going to have to kind of dial that back a little bit, his apostleship a little bit, to be among the brethren and talk about them and be able to have those kind of relationships. So I think it was a good thing that we saw there in 1 Peter chapter 5. And so we'll pick up there. Jeff, do you care to lead us in a word of prayer?
Our God, we come to you now, so grateful for this beautiful morning that you've given us. With this day, we were able to gather here and have this hour of Bible study. We ask, Father, to be with all the classes here this morning, the teachers that are directing the thoughts and the studies of those classes, especially be with Darren here this morning and see the rest of our thoughts this morning. Help us all, Heavenly Father, to concentrate upon your word and your will, and help us all to do what we can to help our studies be good. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you. I do apologize. I've still kind of got the congestion and snotting and stuff, and I'm on my third or fourth cough drop here in the last 20 minutes. So we'll do our best to get through it like we have the last couple of classes. Somebody will start us off by reading verses 1 through 11 again. 1 Peter chapter 5. Somebody read verses 1 through 11.
Not domineering over those in charge, but as being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, he will receive the unfading crown of glory. Shepherd appears, he will receive the unfading crown of glory. Likewise, you who are younger, be subject to the elders. Hold yourselves, all of you, with humility toward one another. For God opposes the proud, but he graces the humble. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him, because he cares for you. Be sober-minded, be watchful, your adversary the devil prowls around like a lion, roaring like a leaping son to devour. Resist him, firm in your faith, knowing that the same kind of suffering are being experienced by your brothers throughout the world. And after you have suffered a little while, God, all grace, who has called you to eternal glory in Christ, will himself restore, confirm, strengthen, and establish you. To him who is in you forever and ever.
Thank you very much. When we left off class, we were actually over in Ezekiel chapter 34, and we were kind of reading this section of where God was condemning the shepherds of Israel there, and kind of the difficult things that they were dealing with. But we basically saw the opposite of what a good shepherd, a good elder, in our case, should be. And so I wanted to pick up this morning and kind of go over what the responsibilities of an elder are. So the first one that I have is that you're to be a shepherd. And I think this speaks directly to the very specific kind of leadership style that it is. You're not a CEO, you're not the sheriff, but you are somebody who is amongst the flock. You're somebody who knows the flock by name. You lead them by example. These people are going to follow you. They should know your voice. They should know who you are. And I think this is very unique. This is very different. I think our elders here do a great job of doing this, but you're to know the flock and you're to lead by example. It's a very different kind of leadership style than a lot of times that we see in the world. It's more of a servant leadership style, obviously, of where, the elders are looking out for the flock. How can we help? How can we assist? How can we help you grow? What can we help you do to be a better Christian and to be a better servant? And that's why we're here. And so I think that's kind of a different leadership style that you see there. I think you also see this idea of exercising oversight. Someone who's just willing to take the lead, to take some responsibility. They're willing to take on and deal with criticism that certainly comes. And they're using their lifelong experiences as a Christian and leading by example because they've been there and done that, quite frankly. I mean, our elders are people who are experienced. I mean, they've been here, they've been around the block, they've seen how things have done, they know how to deal with things, and they're willing to take on that responsibility. I think it's very important. I think the third thing that you see here that Peter talks about is they do it willingly. This is not by compulsion. This is not being forced to do it. They lead as God would lead. They lead how a godly shepherd would lead somebody. If you remember over in Isaiah 40, the mighty God who takes his powerful arm and he picks up this gentle lamb, this gentle, very weak lamb to care for him. I mean, that's what the elders do. They care for those who are weak or who are in need, and they look after them, but they do it willingly. They do it not for shameful gain. The elders are not here to try to get something out of it. Their decisions are based on what is best for the whole. We talked a little bit on Wednesday night. Could an elder be paid? I mean, yes, they could. I mean, I think we read that. But it is not something where the elders are seeking this for some big financial gain. This is not, they're not in it for themselves. They're in it to guide this congregation. They're in it to look after this congregation and to help it in any way they can and the people in it. And then the fifth one I have is they're not domineering, they're not forcing, they're not lording over, but they're imitating the Father. They're following in Jesus' footsteps. They follow the examples that we've talked about in here. They're not going to revile when they've been reviled, and that kind of thing. And so that's kind of the five responsibilities that I see here that Peter kind of talks about as an elder. Did anybody see anything different or anything you want to add to that that he talked about there? Everybody going good. Correct. For sure. Yeah. No, for sure. Mm-hmm. Tim, do you have something? No? Absolutely. Yeah. Lead as Jesus led. You know the sheep. You're amongst them. You're not leading from a town 30 miles away or an hour away. You're leading at the congregation you're at, you're a part of, and you're amongst the people. I think that's very, very important. And obviously God saw that as very, very important. And like Dad referenced, there are many churches today that go away from this model, for sure, in many different ways. And you see the issues that arise because of that, for sure. Yeah. Right. I can see that. Right. For sure. Yeah, for sure. Continuing with the context of this passage, how do you suffer righteously? The elder is going to lead that by example. The world's coming after us. What are we going to do? So that's kind of what we see there. I think we also see in this passage, Peter just kind of references, that the elders are not the chief shepherds. Chief shepherd is coming again. He makes that very, very clear here in a statement. But I think there's also something to say about how the elders should be appreciated. Something to say that they're going to be rewarded by the Lord. Why is it hard? Why is it so hard to find elders? Why is it hard to find people who want to be an elder? That was my point. Going to be my point exactly. It is a very difficult work, quite frankly. It is very difficult work. It is very challenging, and it's hard to find people to fulfill that. And I think we need to understand that the Lord understands that it is a hard work, right? I mean, God understands that. Obviously, we've had an elder here just tell us that. I think it's very true. And then he goes into verse 5, and he talks a little bit about how is it that we should treat elders. How is it that we treat elders? And I think he focuses especially here on the young men. These young men who want to sow their wild oats. They kind of want to do their own. They want to do their own thing. You know that age where you know it all. Nobody else knows anything. And he's saying to these young men, don't treat the elders that way. Don't be that way. Be mature. Try to understand their role and their perspective. Because, isn't it amazing how our perspective in life changes as we get older and we experience new things and we go through new things? Kind of like this light bulb goes off. Oh, now I understand. This is why the eldership is given to more experienced people. They've been there. They've lived through these things. They've dealt with these things. I mean, I don't know about you all. When I was 16, my dad didn't know that much. I mean, I don't know if y'all knew that or not. He just whatever. About the time I got 21, 22, well, he became about the smartest man I knew. And so in just those 5 years, a lot changes, right? A lot changes in your perspective and how you view the world and what it's like out there and what you see. So just okay, maybe a little later, but at some point. But But I think it's just important to focus on, even if you're young, understand, treat our elders the way they deserve to be treated. They are taking on quite a role. They're taking on quite a sacrifice of their time and dealing with very difficult things, very difficult matters. We need to realize that, and we need to treat them respectfully as a part of that. Along with that, I've got just a couple of points, and hopefully the elders can add to this, anybody else can add to this. A couple of points I think we should remember if we find ourselves getting a little frustrated with the elders. And I think this is something that can happen. You know, the elders make a lot of decisions. A lot of stuff is put on them. We don't always understand why those decisions were made. Doesn't seem like it went in my favor, maybe. So now I'm going to be a little frustrated. Maybe a couple of things to think about if you find yourself getting a little frustrated with the elders. And I think the first one is that they probably have more information on the subject than you do. They know a little bit more about what's going on. And I know you might be a little frustrated, but there might be a little more to the story than you know and what's going on. And they certainly know it all. So keep that in mind. I think the second one is that they probably know how it affects everybody in the congregation. Right? I mean, the decisions they make don't just affect me. They don't just affect you. They affect this entire congregation that we have here. And they have to make decisions based on what's best for the whole, for everybody. So it's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's about everybody. And they have to make those decisions. So if you find yourself getting a little frustrated, realize maybe this is the best for the whole congregation, even though it might not be in my favor. They have a broader vision. They have more wisdom. And we need to trust in that. I mean, God asks us to trust in Him, certainly Him and Jesus. And we have that, but we're also asked to trust in our elders, who are our leaders here at this congregation. And they're put in this position for a reason. So it's important that we trust that and we respect that. And then the fourth one I had was things that seem new to us younger people. This seems like a new exciting, new thing that's come along the pike. It's been dealt with before, right? There's nothing new under the sun. People take things and they repackage them and present them in a different way. There's nothing new under the sun. The elders here have seen and dealt with all kinds of different circumstances. They know what's going on. They understand it. May seem new and exciting to us, and maybe, we want to follow that, but, nothing new under the sun, nothing different there, what's going on. So that was just some thoughts on maybe how to deal with some frustration. Anybody have anything to add to that? I think the other thing with our elders is you can always go and meet with them, right? I mean, they meet all the time, and their door's always open. So if you want to know about something, go meet with them. They'll talk to you. I don't think they have any problems talking with anybody from what I've understood. So.
That's a really good idea. I mean, if you've got frustrations with anybody,
correct. I mean, that. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that's how we're taught to deal with anything. Go and discuss with the person, for sure.
I think Sam makes a really, really good point that I think all of the elders would like to see more of this. I don't think that we're called upon as much as you are.
Okay.
For instance, individuals coming to us requesting special prayer for a certain situation or condition, whatever the case might be. Actually, that doesn't happen that much. And that's what we're here for. I think that, we could be called upon more for that. As well as what Sam said, just, to
There you go, from an elder's mouth himself. Do more. Go seek that out more, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, great points. For sure. For sure. Yep. So we're very lucky and thankful that we have these elders who are open and willing to talk about things, and let's use them. As Jeff said, let's use them more. That's what we need to be doing, for sure. So now Peter talks a little bit, moves on. He talks a little bit about how we're to clothe ourselves in humility toward our elders. This is something that Paul has preached. This is something that John has preached. And now Peter's going to preach it. Because if there's anything that God wants us to be, it is to be humble. So what is humility? When you think about humility, what are we talking about here? How would you define humility? The opposite of pride, yeah, for sure. The opposite of pride. The opposite of kind of thinking about yourself a lot. Yeah.
Give up some of yourself. Give up some of your time to somebody else.
Correct. Yes, for sure. For sure. That is humility. Now, oftentimes you hear somebody say, hey, hey, look at me. Hey, watch me do this. I'm so good at this. I'm really good at it. And a lot of times you'll hear that kind of response of, yeah, and you're real humble too. We can tell. Just look at you. I think it's interesting too because the opposite of that's true, right? Somebody who says, yeah, I'm not really good at this. I'm not a very good singer. I don't lead good prayers. Just look at me. Oh, I don't do that well. That's also pride. That is not humility. It's any kind of just extreme focus on yourself, whether good or bad or whatever. And I know we don't often think of it in that way, but that is the opposite of humility. Of just this constant thinking about ourselves and what it is about us. Humility is thinking of others and putting others first. And Paul's explanation of humility, when he was looking at Jesus, is found in Philippians 2 and 3 and 4. If somebody would read that. Philippians chapter 2, 3 and 4. Yeah, exactly. Look to others. Count others more significant than you. Look to the interest of others. Humility is looking towards others. Also, let's look at Matthew 6 and verse 3. Matthew 6 and verse 3, if somebody would read that. Okay, so this idea of just don't draw attention to yourself when you're doing things. Just let be what you do be good enough. And I think it's also interesting is Peter doesn't just say the words be humble, like just go out and be humble. But rather he gives us this picture of that we should clothe ourselves in humility. So why would he use kind of that wording? Why is Peter going to say that you should clothe yourself in humility? What's he trying to get at there?
It's pretty easy to see what people are wearing. Others need to notice it. You don't need to tell others what you're humble. They can see you. And you be telling others what you are.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Put it on in a way that people can see it. That we are humble people. Our uniform, as Sam said, is humility as a Christian. That's our uniform. It's what we wake up and we put on every morning.
This is a good example, sort of somewhat, this is jumping out of the box with this a little bit, but sort of somewhat imitating your appearance. It's a little bit about who you are, your dress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Appearance is part of that. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like this picture we read about in John 13. If you remember there, Jesus removes his robe, he ties a towel around his waist, and he washed the disciples' feet there. He wore the clothing that displayed humility. Also, let's look at Isaiah 66 and verse 2. Somebody read that, please. Isaiah 66 and verse 2. Yeah. So thinking about self, just this constant thinking about myself, actually sets me against God. Sets me against God. But thinking about others allows me to receive His grace. What a powerful picture that is. And then Philippians 2 and verse 8. Somebody would read that, please. Philippians 2 and verse 8. And actually, go through 11. Philippians 2, 8 through 11. And so Paul kind of describing the humility of Christ here. He became obedient to the will of God. Jesus did. His humility was dying to self-will. And because of this, Paul finishes that up in verses 9 through 11, that you just read. We're to follow in those footsteps. That's who we're supposed to be. We're to be humble as Jesus was humble. And so that's kind of Peter's sermon that he starts here in verse 5. Humility. Right? That's what he's talking about. Grace is given to the humble here. Peter says, I know you're anxious. I know you are. I know you have great concerns. These troubling times are coming. These very difficult times are coming. Throw them on the Lord, right? Throw them on the Lord. God will listen. God will listen to you. He loves you. Seek out an elder. Get them to pray for you if that's what you need. But keep seeking the kingdom of God. And what happens if we fail to do that? What happens if we fail to throw our anxieties on God? What are we doing? we're giving foothold to the devil, quite frankly, right? We're giving room for doubt, and when we give room for doubt, then the devil will fill that space, and he will come in. Kind of in that same vein, why does throwing your anxieties and worries on the Lord show humility? If we throw our anxieties and our worries on the Lord, why is this showing humility? Yeah, we can't do it by ourselves, right? It's too much. This world is too much. Why else? It's admitting that we have no power over the circumstances in our life. That I'm not going to be able to carry my load. I'm not going to be able to carry my anxieties. Pride does not do this. Pride depends on self, right? It's all about self. If we're casting our cares on Him, it frees us up from kind of this constant concern, this constant need for self, and it enables us to have a concern for the need of others. And that's what we need to be going for. Get our attention, get our focus off ourselves, get it on other people. Focus on others. It's hard to do. I mean, like all the things that Peter's talked about and all the things we've talked about in this class, I mean, it isn't easy. It isn't something we just wake up one morning and say, oh, I'm just going to be humble today. Just put on my clothing of humility and go about the day, and it'll be a good day. I mean, you don't have to work at it, right? It just takes effort. It takes effort to do a lot of these things that Peter's asking us to do. But we can do it with God's help. And I think we can certainly do it through prayer. A praying life reveals a humble life. Prayer is saying that I can't do this all on my own. I need you, God. I need your help. And so that's why prayer becomes so important. And so we know that God gives grace to the humble, but we also see here that God is concerned with His creation. He cares so much. Look over at Psalms 55 and verse 22. The Lord cares about us, right? He cares deeply. He will look after us, and it's important. It's important to know that and to remember that. Continue in prayer. Put our anxieties and cares and concerns on Him. And if we've done those things, we've done the things Peter talks about, well, then there's going to be a reward, right? After a little suffering, after a little difficult time, there's going to be a reward that he talks about there. He will restore, He will confirm, He will strengthen, He will establish, because this world is just but for a little while. Suffering's temporary, right? It's going to end at some point. Suffering has to end. Heaven is forever. Persecution is temporary. Once again, it's temporary. Heaven is forever. And the Lord is with us. He knows what's going on. He knows what's happening. But He also knows that the devil is going to be provided an opportunity while we're going through this persecution. What does the devil want to do? Well, he wants to devour us, right? I mean, we read that in the Scripture. He wants to devour us. He wants to devour our family. He wants us to be worried and anxious, right? All the time. Get away from prayer, get worried, get anxious. That's what the devil wants. Absolutely. The devil looks for your lowest point. Absolutely.
Those distractions are pretty simple to do. I mean, just a little tweak of the word here and there. Shout, must be baptized. You know, when you have time for it, or
Right.
you know, don't neglect the assembling of the saints when they come together. Don't neglect that. Or if you're not too busy, you don't feel okay. I mean, just little
Yeah, the devil is looking for any foothold he can get, anything. The battle with the devil is not we're driving down the road and there he is and we're going to get out and fist fight to the death.
It'd be so much easier.
It would be. Yeah, I agree. It is just the constant nitpicking, constant testing. Where are you weak? Where can I get a foothold? Constant, just looking. And we've talked about that in this class. That's why we have to be constantly on guard and constantly aware and constantly prepared. Can't be dealing with sin and all the things that go with that because we're constantly being tested by the devil. Where is he going to get you? How's he going to get you? It's a great point. Yeah, it's very, very tough. He also wants us to be consumed with this world. He wants us to be consumed with material and wealth and prosperity and anything in this world that he can get our mind on. The devil is wanting that. He wants us to be discouraged constantly. Just anything that comes along. Well, let's get you discouraged, because when you're discouraged, you're weak. And when you're weak, I can get my foothold in. He wants us to fight amongst ourselves. And certainly, unfortunately, that happens from time to time. And hopefully we avoid that. Peter says here in verse 9, resisting. Right? Resisting. You can do it. You can put him off. Resisting. Don't give in. Resist him. I think it's interesting that here at the very end of this letter, Peter's once again kind of bringing it back. He's talking it back to us. Don't focus on the world. Don't focus on the problems that are going on, that are going to be there. You take care of you and you remain close to God. And keep in mind, brethren all over the world are dealing with this, right? Brethren all over the world are dealing with suffering. They're dealing with persecution. They're all dealing with the same stuff. We are. They're obsessed with bells. Lots of bells. Trust him. It's just getting louder. It's wild. So somebody. I can stop. All right, so let's finish this up. Somebody read verses 12 through 14. Somebody read. There you go. Thank you. So I think it's pretty evident here that the people knew who Silas was. I think that's the reference to Silvanus there. This is Silas. They understood who he was. We see once again this reference to Babylon here. We've talked about that in class. It's most likely a code word for Rome. And then you kind of have this phrase, who is the she in Rome? And I think that's referring to the church there. I think that is the church there. And the term, we also see here the term chosen is used here again. We've talked about that endlessly in this class. Yes, certainly, we've been chosen by God if we've listened and we believe what he says, and we've been chosen by him. So he uses that again. So I think we see here that the church in Rome is sending greetings to these Christians. And, I think, he refers to Mark as his son. I certainly think this is just a term of endearment, term of love, kind of like Paul referred to Timothy as his son. And I think we see that there are some remarkable things in this book that we have studied, for sure. Kind of an amazing thing. So that concludes 1 Peter. So that's kind of cool. Kind of neat that we got through it. So that means on Wednesday night we're going to start on 2 Peter. And just a couple of thoughts to prepare for our study on 2 Peter. Trying to find where I had a question there. 2 Peter is a little different. 2 Peter is a little different in the fact that it really doesn't have a author. Doesn't really mention the author. Doesn't really mention the recipients. Doesn't mention the salutation. There's no thanksgiving. There's no body. There's no concluding remarks. There's no greetings. Maybe it does mention the author. I don't remember. May mess that up. But what it doesn't mention is basically all the other stuff that we typically look into when we open up a new book. Like we like to go through this: who's it for, and who's it to, and what is all this stuff. And it really doesn't start out like that. And so, if you could, study a little bit about why that is. There's some different thoughts out there. There is certainly the thought that 2 Peter is just a continuing on of 1 Peter. Obviously, he gets a different subject, but that Peter is just continuing on, talking to the same people here, same group of people, and so he just went from 1 Peter to 2 Peter. I think this may be the most likely, but there are some disagreements in that. There are some things that you see in 2 Peter that don't quite add up to that. And so your homework is to kind of study on why that is. And so is this just a continuation of 1 Peter, or is this something else? Is 1 Peter and 2 Peter the order that they were written? I think we know that from looking at other books in the Bible, we see that that's not always necessarily the case. That the second book that is listed has been the actual second one written. There's examples of that. There's examples of missing letters that are out there, and so I think there's some study that you'll find that could be interesting to you there. How does 2 Peter fit into the big picture of all this? So we'll look at that on Wednesday night a little bit. You may have any big thing on 1 Peter? Finish it up. Yeah, I don't know why I said it didn't mention the author. It clearly mentions the author in 2 Peter verses 1. So my apologies on that one. But the point staying is it doesn't do any of the other stuff. So thank you all. We'll see you Wednesday night, and we'll get into you on 2 Peter.